of Planning and Community Development. First of all, ladies and gentlemen,
Speaking here.
ladies and gentlemen, can we get a motion to approve the minutes of our prior meeting? Supervisor Beatty, seconded by Supervisor Wild. All those in favor? The most important issue is probably to wish Mr. Bartholomew a happy birthday. So he's 39. He's 39 again. He told me. Okay. Could I first of all get a motion for a resolution to request Senator Little to propose legislation to the state of New York to include Brant Lake as part of the intercoastal waterway system? Supervisor McGowan, seconded by Supervisor Leggett, and discussion on the issue. Maybe can you give us a little perspective on what's actually happening here?
Sure.
Thank you, Chris.
It was actually suggested to us by Department of State while working with the town of Horicon to incorporate them to the First Wilderness Heritage Corridor. It was a suggestion by Department of State to include Brant Lake as a designated inland waterway. More or less, I think there's going to be some changes in the next few years with that program. And because of a lot of the goals and projects that were identified as part of the Horicon plan, a lot of them centered around Brant Lake. And given some of those changes that will be happening, I think, in the next few years, it would behoove the county to encourage the senator to carry that legislation.
All right. So is this I'm going to pose a question, then I'll get to Supervisor Bramer. So is this really a mechanism to enable us to get state funding?
Yes.
Okay. Supervisor Bramer.
I defer, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Light.
Are there any downsides to this?
Not that I'm aware of. It's not, it's not, it's not a local waterfront renovation plan that's being adopted here. It's just more or less a mechanism for providing state funding.
Thank you. Supervisor Hogan.
To be clear, are we asking her to suggest another amendment? Are we joining in the amendment that's already out there for Boston Lake? What are we asking for here?
It's not necessarily an amendment. There's a list of water bodies that the state identifies can access the state funding. Correct. We're asking the senator to include Brant Lake on that list of waterways. And Warren County would include Scroon Lake, Scroon River, and Hudson River, and Lake George.
They're already on there, yeah.
Yes. So we're looking to add.
So Brant Lake is significantly smaller than all the water bodies that are already on that list. We've had enough conversation that we feel confident that this is going to come through?
Yes, so the mechanism that kind of allowed for the planning work in Horicon was the Scroon Lake and the Scroon River. Through that planning process, we identified a lot of projects around Brant Lake. Because of some program changes I think we'll see in the next few years, if the water body that those projects are not located around is not designated, you're hurting your chances of being funded for those projects.
So since we're kind of asking them to change their parameters, should we be including other lakes in Warren County? Just ask them, so that we don't have to go back again. Right?
Perhaps. Yeah. This was a message being carried by Wayne. So.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to be this. We hear a lot from supervisors from other towns that have lakes that they need consideration as well. So before we move forward with this, should we consider the bigger picture, or that's all?
I guess we can think about that. Supervisor Simpson and then Supervisor Leggett.
There's a couple of points I'd like to make. Brant Lake is the largest lake in Warren County that's wholly within Warren County, for one thing. They worked for 20 years on strategic planning and trying to get to a point where there actually is a comprehensive plan on managing that water body, you know, including stormwater, invasives, everything that's there. So I believe Lake George has a similar situation, Schroon Lake does. I think it's, you know, the difference is that each community that has a lake, have they done the strategic planning, have they done the work to get to that point? Because it's not just getting this designation, you actually have to have a plan for why you're applying for that designation and then moving forward, so.
Did you want to respond to that, Supervisor Hogan, or?
Yeah, understood, and I'm not trying to pull the plug on your ask, I'm just asking if we should
Ask more.
set the other communities up for success as well.
I just would like, on behalf of Horkin, I'd like to move forward, and I don't have any control over other lakes and other municipalities on what they're doing with their lakes. I mean, I just don't want to slow this process down.
Is there a grant that we're looking at that?
I think it's part of the planning and the, you know, the ability to fund these planning projects, the things that have been identified, moving forward.
Okay. Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you.
And Supervisor
Loon-
McGowan, then Bailey.
Yeah. Loon Lake and Friends Lake also flow into the Schroon River with the same outflow that Brant Lake has, and right nearby as well. Can we get on the list as well? And would it behoove us?
You're the decision makers, but yeah, I mean, I would say it's now up to me. This was like I said, a recommendation that came from our rep at Department of State. So I personally don't have any apprehension about including other lakes, but again, that's not my decision.
Supervisor McGowan.
Yes, I think from what my understanding is yes, I'd like to see, you know, all our lakes included on this. But from it sounds like from Matt, and that is that, you know, Brant Lake has done a lot of work to achieve this, and I think that the other supervisors of these towns of lakes and that, you know, need to be able to join in that. But I mean, for right now, I think Brant Lake is the one being proposed, and I, you know, I support that. But I think we also should look into adding the other lakes, but I don't know if we can do that with this one particular resolution.
Beatty, Wild, and then Bramer.
Okay, this is a Betty Little question. Betty Little is the one who's brought this legislative piece, who wants to bring it. So my recommendation would be that we table it today. You contact Betty Little, either Chris or Andrea, you and Craig, see if your lakes can be...
I don't have any lakes, I was just throwing
Okay,
this
but-
out there
well,
for discussion.
Well, to see if additional lakes can be added to the legislation.
Well, this was a request to Senator Little. Request
We're
to Senator
making the
Little.
request.
Request to
We're
Senator
making the
Little.
request,
We're making
not
the
Betty
request.
Little.
Correct. We're making the request that
So
Betty
if
Little...
we, so if we are making a request, why can't we expand it then? I thought this was Betty Little's request to us, saying this is, but since we, the county board is making the request, I don't see a problem personally in adding additional lakes to it.
The proposal came from our representative at Department of State through a planning process. So, you know, if you guys would like to include others, I suppose that's up to this body.
Okay.
But
Supervisor-
the whole concept came about because of Brant Lake.
Okay.
Supervisor Leggett, then Supervisor Wild, then Supervisor Bramer.
I think we should just go ahead with it as it is. There's a lot of background, things have been moving along, and if it comes from Department of State recommendation, if there's need to amend or add, we can always do that at a later date, but I think the resolution that's on the floor is sufficient.
Supervisor Wild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris, you mentioned that this is related to some upcoming changes in the state activities. Is there any risk in delaying this for 1 month?
No, but I would assume the legislative calendar would starts at the beginning of the year. So,
Matt, do you have any concerns about delaying this 1 month to see if it's possible for us to add these other?
I do have some concerns. I mean, just because we're moving forward, we've just been through a long planning exercise in the town of Horkin with Warren County And it's not that I don't support other lakes doing this, but we're getting delayed because we're moving forward, and I see that as a disadvantage.
Is there money at risk?
It could be. I mean, we have a plan that we're moving forward with, and it includes this designation request, and yeah. I mean, we have a lot of volunteers in the community that have come together, that have, and this is a result of their efforts, and you know, I just don't think that that's an appropriate thing to do. I would also, on a similar track, look at these other lakes and find out who we should do this for. But I think it should be a separate action.
And my only, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, my only concern is multiple asks to Betty, one now and one, a month or two from now. I mean, is that going to just make it more difficult to make the others happen? I don't know. I'm just asking.
Supervisor Leggett, and then Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you. Matt, I'd be careful. I'm just thinking of all the yachts that are in the intercoastal. They're going to be one coming up that little river.
Supervisor Bramer.
I know we have other water bodies in the county, but I don't see any harm with us moving forward now. They're ready, and we can always ask more later. So I'd be in support of this if they think that they can get through that. I have concerns that they might not meet the intercoastal waterway system definition, but that's above my pay grade.
So we have a motion on the floor that has been seconded.
I'll move the motion.
I think we already have. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Sarah?
Okay,
Carry on.
we have two very exciting projects that we've been working on for a long time. We're going to release both of those today, so excited about that. The first is the Warren County History Mapper. So you may remember a little over a year ago we released the Recreation Mapper, which has met with a lot of success and use, and this application, the Warren County History Mapper, is a sister application to the Recreation Mapper. It's similar in look and feel. I'll bring it up in a minute, but before we get started, I just wanted to thank our county historian, Dr. Sam Zanfrano, who's here with us today. We definitely could not have done this project without him. He was a huge resource. He also helped us with getting the assistance from all of the municipal historians throughout Warren County and prodding them to review their items and provide information to us, helping us research locations that we were having problems with. So we're very thankful for his assistance and for all of the town historian assistants. Also, Amanda Beck, who is our junior planner. I think you met her a few months ago. She started with us in April. This has been her main project since she started. She has done almost all of the data collection for this project. There's about 550 sites in the county, so she's gotten very familiar with Warren County over the last few months, and she took every single picture in this new application. So I passed out these postcards. These will be provided to the towns and to put in various visitor centers. We'll provide some to each of the historians as well. So you just have the URL for the History Mapper. It's mobile-friendly, desktop-friendly, location-enabled like the Recreation Mapper, so you can find your location and then see what's around you. And then we decided to take advantage of space and put the Recreation Mapper on the flip side. So, here it is.
Can I just make a comment? I think this is very well done, and all the folks that kind of put together putting something as simple as this piece of paper in my hand together to get an effective message across, which I think this does. So I think it's harder than it looks. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. This is going to tie into our next item we're releasing in a minute after this as well. So basically, this is a complete complete inventory of every single National Register site in Warren County, every single historical marker in Warren County, every single cemetery in Warren County. This is a giant undertaking.
Wow.
We also have art and theater locations. Most likely we'll pull these out, put these in a separate map, a separate mapping application down the line, but for now they're here, and then all of our museums, historical associations. So each one of these has a location on the map. I think this button right here, I don't think is working inside. This will work outside on your phones. This is the GPS in your phone. So you can click that, a little blue pointer will come up on the map. I think we're having a slow internet connection here. Let's see. Up here. So we have information about each marker, directions to get to the marker, more information about each marker for all of the National Register sites. We have a very slow connection here. Glen Falls has 3 squares historic district, tons and tons of properties on the National Register. There's a lot of information about all of these properties. Amanda's worked with the city historian, Wayne Wright, to include a lot of the nominating text that went to the National Register of Historic Places about each one of these various different locations. And I apologize if I think we have a really slow internet connection, but it should be pulling up information about each one of these locations. What is going on other than slow internet? The cemeteries, also, I don't know, this is a big deal for genealogists. They love cemeteries. We have a link out on each one of these cemeteries. I apologize for the slowness here. So if there are any amateur genealogists in the audience here, you may be familiar with the Find a Grave website that actually has a list. This is sort of a crowdsourced application where people can make an inventory of all of the memorials in each cemetery and request photos from people who may be nearby. This site is heavily used by genealogists, but from a geographic standpoint, it's not especially well organized. So what we've been able to do is locate all of the cemeteries and then link out to Find a Grave. So I think this will be a fantastic resource for genealogists in the area, as well as just people who might have some curiosity. I think there's a whole subset of people who are very interested in, we have some amazing history in our area. Back all the way to the Indians, but then to the French and Indian War and the Revolutionary War, early days of tourism. We have some amazing architectural history in our county as well. So in addition to all of these individual sites of all these historic markers and National Register sites, we also wanted to provide some context for many of these locations. So instead of just having a pile of historic properties or historic markers that may cover anything from the pre-colonial days up through early tourism, what we wanted to do is provide some themed tours. So we have a few here to start. These have all been in partnership with local historical associations or books. But we've been able to take these deeper tours that have been put together. This one was put together by the Chapman Historical Society, and put these in a mobile-friendly format. So again, these work both on the computer, but then as a walking tour on your phone, so that you can click the locate button on your phone as you're walking along. You can read a little bit about the history of each of these locations, as well as have directions to get from each location to each location.
Supervisor Bay, did you have a question?
Yeah, what's the oldest cemetery, do you know, in the county? I'm just curious. And what's the oldest grave marker in there? I was just curious.
Yeah, that would be an interesting little piece
I'm
of
just-
trivia to have. You have to look through all of these.
Okay.
That's the answer.
Okay.
So that's the Glens Falls one. We also have this one, this Chestertown Architectural Tour. It's a very interesting tour. It was, we were given permission to use this, thanks again to our county historian for making us aware of it and getting in touch with the woman who wrote. She's an architect. She wrote a book about, I think a couple books about architecture in the Adirondacks. So we've got a very nice tour through various different styles of historic architecture and some information about what makes each piece of archacture important. That one was a little questionable, but
Oh,
I
the
guess
car's
that's
gone now.
architectural
That's okay.
significance.
Actually, that just went to tax sale.
Don't bring that up.
Oh, well.
Sore subject.
So, yeah, so there's a lot of good information about each one of these properties. Again, mobile-friendly. People who are interested in architecture and history, I think that's a great tour. And then we've got a Colonial Wars tour through Lake George Village. This is provided with permission from Bateau Below. So this locates all of the various sites of interest during the French and Indian War and a couple during the Revolutionary War as well. So we'll continue to work with historians and historical societies who are providing these tours to us to continue to include them in the mapper. That's it. I guess anybody have any questions about this? The postcard includes the URL. We'll be advertising this via our social media accounts, the Visit Lake George site. We're hoping that our local papers will make people aware of this great new application.
Great.
Okay, so moving on to our second release here. This, you may remember, several months ago we approved the hire of Advocate to do some social media marketing and also update the posters in the Lake George Visitor Center, which are 20-ish years old and need a refresh. So I have the release of these posters today. I have 4 copies of each. Please feel free to take your own towns, and then if you want to take, a couple other ones as we have leftovers, I'll pass them each way. So these have been through a number of rounds of design and review. Our office provided the text with some assistance from tourism, and I think Sidekick Creative, who's subcontracting with Advocate, Kate did an amazing job with designing these posters. So these will be hanging in the Visitor Center on Beach Road, and they'll also be an 8.5 by 11 cell sheet, but there's a bin under each poster where visitors can take with them. So the flip side of these has a map of each community with points of interest. I haven't finished all the maps yet, but I finished about 8. So if you can take your town, review the text, review the map, just let me know if there's anything you think I missed that you'd like to include.
No, you can make copies for me if I
They're coming around.
I don't have enough to take one of each for each person to approve. Yeah, I can.
Doing, Fred? Take them out.
Yeah.
So,
Also, can you send them to us in like the picture format that'll go
Look at
on?
this town. This town, she'll get us more.
Or not yet?
Not yet. I'm going to discuss this.
You know, and maybe we can get you some later.
So, we were pretty much blown away with these. They weren't quite exactly what we were expecting, but we were pretty impressed with this custom artwork that Sidekick Creative has put together. These work as a series of 12 for each there's 4 seasons represented, 3 communities for each season, and then there's 3 times of day. So there's sunrise, midday, and sunset. So altogether, I think these look amazing. If you lay out all 12 and kind of view them together, and if you've been to the visitor center, you know these is a beautiful display case that was built by Adirondack Scenic, a beautiful wood sort of curved display. So these would be replacing the posters in the visitor center. We have already had, the Sidekick has been posting some of these on Instagram as they've finished them, and we've had via Instagram, and then just here internally in the county, we've had a lot of interest and the ability to purchase this artwork. So this is the main piece of art in each one of these. So for instance, this one in Johnsburg, this centerpiece of art here in the upper left. So we had the thought, because these turned out so amazingly, that it might be nice to sell these as posters at the visitor center. So we checked with the county attorney to see if that was actually legal to do, and she said it is definitely legal to do. So we got some quotes from Advocate and Sidekick as far as how much it would cost to resize these to a standard poster size that people could easily frame, and how much it would cost to print nice quality posters. So that's something that we wanted to bring to the committee to discuss, to see whether that's something the committee would like to pursue. Do we want to sell these? If so, do we want to sell them at the visitor center? Or alternately, we can sell them through our department, although we're not set up to accept cash, so we have to do some setup to enable that. But just wanted to get a feeling for what everybody's thoughts were.
Supervisor Beatty.
Yeah, these are excellent. I'm just curious, so some of them have,
So I've been doing the math, and there are 4 that I didn't finish yet.
okay, there you go. Well, I'm detailed, you know, and I see some of the others don't. Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Bramer.
So, for the poster that we would sell, it wouldn't be this whole info sheet, it
No,
would just be...
the art, just
Would it
that,
be these
without the
words
text.
too?
No.
Would it be those words?
Yes. Okay. So there'd be one for each town, it's just the town, so Horak and New York, just the artwork. Okay. And it's 16 by 20.
And Sidekick said that we could do that?
So, yeah, so we would need to purchase a digital release, which would enable us to use the artwork in any context we want. So we could use this on the Visit Lake George site, on our First Wilderness site. The towns could use the artwork to produce any materials that they want to produce. We can produce anything that we want with them. We also had the thought it might be a fun calendar, because there are 12 images and they cycle through the seasons. So this might be a really cool calendar. So we would need to purchase a digital release for this imagery, because Sidekick owns the imagery. We don't own it, even though they created it through us, just via the terms of the contract agreement. So their cost would be $275 to purchase a license, which would allow us to use the artwork for anything we want to.
How long is the license for?
Perpetuity.
Perpetuity?
Yeah. So I think it's a good deal for the quality of artwork that we would get, and I think how representative they are.
Is that per poster?
Per poster, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Supervisor Wild.
Oh, I'm sorry, it was $275 each. So I was going to make a motion to spend $275 for all 12.
Times 12, I think it's still worth it.
I'll put the motion out on the table.
Okay. Motion by Supervisor Wild. Do we have a second? Supervisor Bramer, discussion.
Just to clarify, are you saying 275 times 12?
That's what Sarah was conveying.
Yeah, okay, I second that motion.
Okay. Any discussion?
And then I think we also need to decide, do we want to print and sell these as posters? I think there was some discussion about setting a fund up. Ryan may want to talk about that further. It would, the cost to print 100 of each community at 16 by 20 is $3,700, so a little over $3 a piece. For the poster, we have to decide how much we want to sell them for. We'd also need to come to an agreement with the visitor center. So we don't have resolutions ready for all of this right now. We just wanted to basically discuss it and see what people's thoughts were on this, and then we can come back next month and set up the mechanism
Great.
to do all the...
Before voting, maybe Ryan can address where the money may come from.
Well, I would suggest that we talk with the treasurer's office about the ability of whoever is selling these, where the point of transaction is for that entity, whether it's the planning office or the visitor center, the town halls, for them to accept a check to Warren County. We can bundle them together and have the treasurer's office handle that. And we did, at the budget committee meeting last week, approve the creation of a fund assignment for feasibility studies to help the towns with their capital infrastructure planning. So I would suggest that if we go ahead and do this, that we have any proceeds go into that fund.
Great. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Did you want to say something, Mr. Regal?
So, where's the money coming from?
From whoever wants to buy the posters.
No, right now
We
to
need
buy.
upfront money.
The upfront money.
Oh, we can do that out of the county budget, and then we can recoup it out of the poster sales.
Now, again, is this something that we can use Octax with? Because,
suppose we
I mean, it has to do with tourism and that's one of the reasons why we have that fund. I mean, taking it out of the county, I mean, we want to attract people and that, and then what money we get from the sales will go back into Octax.
We could do that, not from this committee, we'd have to do it at the Octax committee.
Well, I mean, that's up to the chairman. I mean, that's why we have this fund, and like I said, it's really representing our county, and then people pay for that to come in and...
Supervisor Wild.
Just to be clear, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The motion was to purchase the artwork. My intent was it's great for the website and having some consistency across the board. I'm not so sure how much sales we'll get out of this. I'd like to kind of maybe get some retailers give us a chance to give us some insights in terms of whether or not this is
Okay, we do have a motion on the floor. It has been seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Sarah?
Okay, thank you. So again, if anybody has, before we go to print and manufacture the panels, if anybody has any, at this point we'll accept minor revisions to text, and also if there's any missing things on the map, please let me know. Okay, just wanted to let everybody know about our Census 2020 Complete Count Committee. We are forming a Complete Count Committee to assist with making sure people complete the 2020 census, which will be in April of next year. So this committee will be meeting once a month, starting, our first meeting is November 4th at 10 a.m. on the third floor of the Human Services Building. We've invited representatives of local nonprofits, medical community, education, religious organizations, definitely trying to target the hard-to-count populations. We have a few local municipal representatives as well, just registered as volunteers to sit on that committee. If anybody would like to attend, it's open to the public, 10 a.m. November 4th, so 2 weeks from this morning. And we'll be meeting once a month through May of next year to discuss strategies for assisting our constituents with completing the census and making sure we get a complete count. And then we have one addition to the agenda with the permission of our chairman. Patricia Tadich would like to say a few words about our upcoming housing study that she'll be working with Ed on.
Go ahead, Pat. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I can assure you, this will not be as colorful as Sarah's presentation, but certainly equally important. This is a topic that has been tossed around for a long time, and for those of you who may or may not know this, the planning department has been involved in the business of housing from the standpoint of renovations, replacements, new construction, since 1982. And from 1982 to 2002, probably the heyday of the funding from the Community Development Block Grant Program. And we, with the cooperation of the towns, renovated and replaced and built over 2,200 units. So we certainly have a stake in the business of housing and the work that needs to be done. So our knowledge of the topic is, there's a history there. And as you may know, there's a lot of discussion circulating about the issue of affordable housing. And we have reason to believe that there may be a lack of available affordable housing, which is negatively impacting our communities. I prepared for you in concert with Wayne, he and I have been working on this memorandum, which kind of explains what the issue is, and then we have articulated the project with Pat. So I really want to go over the memo, and you could read the list of the project scope at your leisure. The intent today was to basically inform and to sort of launch the information about this. We have not formally asked for a resolution to begin this project, but certainly that is forthcoming. There was a meeting sponsored by EDC. Ed put together a meeting back in March where we had various town supervisors, and they came from Warren County as well as, do we have other counties from Sarasota, or was it Warren? Yeah. And the dialogue that ensued at that meeting basically suggested that there's an issue. We know what the impact of Airbnbs are having on the available housing that's for use for workforce housing. We know what the baby boomers are doing and how they are reacting to movement from a larger home or a single-family home to something else. All those factors combined with the movement of millennials out of the state, new people coming in who need jobs, and the fact of the matter is that we suspect that there's a problem with the amount of affordable housing, workforce housing. So to that end, at this meeting we had a representative from the New York State Office of Homes and Community Renewal to provide information on the programs and financing for the development of new housing. And as you might suspect, you know, when you start talking about financing and developing housing, you get into the deep weeds of the banks, the federal tax credit program, and you know, it was, I gotta say, it was pretty overwhelming. And Wayne and I kind of walked away from the meeting, he and I both attended, and we said, you know, we really need to take a look at developing a focused effort to collect data, to take information, and put together a plan to go forward with understanding the data and trying to get private developers interested in the development of new housing in our communities. And what we know is the rural communities are about the hardest to accomplish this. The city of Glens Falls and the town of Queensbury, excuse me, already have plans in place. There's a market study done in relation to a new project on Broad Street. The town of Queensbury worked with received money from the Division of Housing to do a needs analysis. I've spoken at length with Stuart Baker about that, and so we know that we have some of the information. We just don't have all the information. The results of that meeting basically indicated that we should move forward with a more comprehensive housing study and really get to the heart of the matter, and that is to create a market demand analysis. And this would be this market demand analysis would include inventory of existing supply, the occupancy levels, the wait list, the type and number of new units needed, and the cost data. So this effort, we hope, will enhance the opportunity for qualified developers to utilize that data to obtain financing, either through the federal tax credit program or through the state housing program. So Attached to this memo is a project scope, and it has specific tasks, and it's kind of broken down by A, B, and C. A and B are what we believe are the tasks that can be performed internally by the planning department in support, with support of the Department of Social Services, public health, the communities. Most recently, we worked with the town of Chester in doing a housing a needs analysis in support of their applications for the Pottersville Water District. And I think they, from the work that they did there, in terms of the groundwork that they did, I believe that they're the gold standard for how we should approach the housing inventory. So we would look to the town of Chester to kind of give us some support and help the other communities detail what they did and how they use their local resources within their community to gather this information. We anticipate that this study will occur over a 9-month period, and it will require financial support, as you might imagine, in addition to what the planning department is going to do. We've had discussion with Ed, and as you know, they manage the funding for the Warren County LBC, and we anticipate that this study is going to be upwards of $20,000. And should we not have enough money when we get to that level, and we are into the June-July funding run of next year, we would look to secure, put in an application for a community planning money under the block grant program, similar to what we did for the countryside adult home building assessment study. So, you know, we've got a good start here with the resources we have locally. So we have, after this meeting, I'm going to do a similar presentation to the Warren County LBC board and kind of inform them of this effort. So at this point in time, we know that we would like to proceed. I think there is all reason to believe that we need the study. We need to do the background collections so we know where we are, because truthfully, we don't know. And I understand that we're kind of we're doing this the census, but I think there's enough information out there through the information at the census and local level that I think we can make a good case for what our needs are here. So other than a future memorandum of agreement between Warren County, the Warren County LBC and the Warren County EDC, I think we have the right players available and the right funds available to launch this effort. So I would just ask Ed, if would you like to contribute anything to this?
I think it's a collective effort, and I think that the key is that the high level of interest from the supervisors throughout Warren County in promoting this. This is very important. Of course, affordable housing is needed throughout Warren County, particularly in the country. Many of the residents are weekly salaries for housing. Additionally, that along with daycare are really hindering our increase in our workforce, particularly in the North Country. I think that affordable housing, there have been some studies in the past. The Adirondack Gateway Council did a study about 5 or 6 years ago. That data added to what is being collected now, I think, provides the basis to give to the state and to be able to attract certain developers that are looking to develop in upstate New York the ability to analyze these projects along with the appropriate tax credits as well. So I think this is a good start. The EDC is pleased to be part of this important study for Warren County. Look forward to working with Pat, who is the guru of housing in Warren County. She has broadened the expertise of the entire department, but in all due respect, Patricia has been the one that has been leading the charge over the years, whether it was rehabilitation of housing or rehabilitation. Warren County was one of the first counties to have money permitted to restore and rehab appropriate mobile homes that were able to rehab. That was significant step that Patricia undertook. So I think that we're fortunate that we don't have to go to the West Coast to find an expert to help us do this. We have one right here in Warren County.
Thank you.
Supervisor Wild.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just have one thought, and it's related to the investors that might be looking at this a few years down the line. And can we make this somewhat state-of-the-economy neutral? And I'm saying that because the economy right now is very strong. Right? We're at, 3% unemployment or something like that, Ed, but basically we're at full employment. So, 3 or 4 years down the line, who knows what's going to happen with the economy, but if the economy does sag, I'd hate to have investors question our data because we don't have some type of correlation there between, a booming economy versus a not-so-booming economy, if I could just...
So what happens,
state
Michael,
that.
there's a two-step process to this. One is we provide this data to the state of New York, which they review, and in turn share that with potential developers, investors. They then undertake their own internal feasibility study from that data, and they undertake it themselves. So while they look at this data to get interest, they then do their own due diligence. They have to do that for their bankers and their investors as well. So I think it's a double push in order for us to develop the interest, one, and then two, the developers take over and do their own feasibility studies, like Queensbury. Queensbury has done a base level study feasibility in the town of Queensbury. That is then turned over to developer Michael Wild Incorporated that will then look at that and take that and delve into it to see if these facts and figures match up with them. So it's a two-edge process. So it's just not our data they're going to rely on. But the data is pretty straightforward in terms of the American Community Studies and others that we can put together along with the prior census tract and so forth.
Supervisor Brammer, did you have something?
Well, when we were at the NACO conference, Supervisor Simpson was there and Hogan, they did have other resources available for attracting developers, because we definitely have a need in our rural areas, and it's, to me, doing another study, while useful for Department of State purposes, what can we as a county be doing to attract more developers, or do we just need to build the housing ourselves?
No, first of all, you have to get updated data, and secondly, what NACO and others are talking about, and we talked with some of our supervisors, is the fact that you start inserting and looking to put affordable housing in up-county areas, there is a lack of infrastructure, such as
public transportation,
water, such as wastewater treatment, and public transportation. So there are some other areas, and certainly USDA and other aspects of this can come in and assist a developer. I would think that the last thing that we would want to do is have county and municipalities directly get involved in the housing itself, because I think that there are developers out there that can provide this. Let them go out and take the risk rather than the county and municipal government at this particular point.
I get that. Certainly, we try to stay out of those proprietary functions, but it doesn't seem like there are any developers coming. There's the one on Main Street in Glens Falls.
Yeah, that's not true. There's been no concerted effort by Warren County. The state of New York has identified Warren County as an important county to review and to assist with them. They already have identified certain developers in upstate New York that are interested in developing these products. It's an entirely different ballgame in upstate New York, because in the urban areas you can build. You go to New York City, you have thousands of units. You go to Albany, there are hundreds of units. When you come up upstate, what's going to happen is satellites. You're going to have maybe 25 to 35 units in the Johnsburg area. You may go over into the Horicon, Chester area and put another 35 to 40. In Warrensburg, there may be another unit. So a developer, unless they're familiar with this operation, you have to key in on particular areas. So they're going to look at Chester or Johnsburg, Horicon, and see what is the viability of infrastructure in those areas. That's where the USDA, that's where our federal legislators and our state legislators can assist us in providing some money.
So
in regards to
just-
this.
I've
It's a
got my-
comprehensive effort beyond just doing this initial focus here to provide some data with the
Right,
state.
so in parallel with collecting the data, which you say we definitely need, we need to be working on these other infrastructure projects.
That is- Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you're saying.
Okay.
It's a comprehensive effort in the North Country. Those kind of issues you don't find in Queensbury or Glens Falls.
And will we need that higher level planning to help us understand where those things are that we need to get done?
I think that Warren County planning has already the idea. We know where there's the lack of water. We know in Chester, and our supervisors are well versed as to where their water supply ends and what needs to be developed in the area. Also, our exit study kind of runs into this as well in terms of what planning is needed. There may be some variances that are required either from the Adirondack Park Agency or from the area. So this is a very first important step, though, to get the state more interested in looking at Warren County.
Supervisor Hogan.
To answer your first question, we need the study to take to places like NACO and the state. This is the first step. Those are the next steps. So we'll use their resources, but this study is what's going to inform what kind of help they can give us. That helps?
Supervisor Simpson and then Supervisor Leggett.
I just,
And back to Pat Tatch.
don't want to underestimate the, the overreaching issue in the area. Like you have the park agency, you have zoning, you have density guidelines, you have all sorts of issues too, an added layer to figuring out this issue.
Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Describe for supervisors how the LDC was set up to take on projects like this. Is that correct? You know, is this within the scope of work?
One of the components over the years, the Local Development Corporation of Warren County set up a funding mechanism to be the recipient of funds from HUD and other state agencies, as well as federal agencies, for housing purposes. And there is this separate fund that the Local Development Corporation administers, in which $10,000 of that, we've had some discussions at the LDC meeting, that would be allocated toward this. EDC is also making a contribution of $10,000 as well, for the total of $20,000 to start with. There may come back and the consultant, after the preliminary work, to keep the cost down, the county is doing a lot of the work, as Patricia's indicated. It may come back and say, we do need a little bit more studies in this particular area, and EDC would be prepared to assist in that, so that we can get this study, as Supervisor Hogan has indicated. We need to get this done, analyze it, take it to the state HCR, because they're really the gateway for the developers. Developers call HCR, Housing Community Renewal, to see where areas are aggressively moving toward the affordable housing. And that's their first knock on the door, is not with the respective counties, but with home community renewal. So we will be working hand in hand with Darren Scott, who is the upstate representative for HCR with this study.
Pat, did you want to summarize?
I just want, three closing points. In following on what Ed said, we would seek to use identify or secure services from a market analyst firm that's on the Division of Housing and Community Renewal's list. The second item is that, we need to get our data house in order. And part of getting the data house in order is not just about the county, it's also with the communities, and it's with their planning board. So we would like to form a working group, and we can talk a little bit about that the next time we meet, as with a resolution to advance this. But I think it follows on what Supervisor Gramer said and Supervisor Hogan said, and what Ed said, is like, this has got a lot of fingers here, and we need to make sure that they all come together, and our best space goes forward here as we move with attracting developers.
Thank you very much, Pat. Got to keep moving here. Did you, Ed, have a presentation?
Yes, I thought I would go to the
Great.
immediate issue at hand with your permission and
Great.
Administrator Brian Moore. And then John wanted to ask this. One of the issues that we'd like to present is the fact that to have this committee recommend a public hearing for November 11th relative to the request by EDC to extend the option on 4 remaining lots in the Queensbury Business Park on November 11th, as well as to consider an amendment to the current option agreement. Instead of purely sending the agreement, we would propose that a formula be developed based on a sharing of 50-50 between EDC and Warren County. The proceeds of the sale of the lot following certain identified net proceeds, which would include the original acquisition cost, which is $1,600. Just for background purposes, currently EDC owns 23 acres, the first 4 lots essentially in Queensbury Business Park off County Line Road. That was acquired by EDC at a cost of $1,600 per acre for around $37,000. Below that, you have the Army Reserve way in the back, and then you have 4 remaining lots that the option price is at $1,600, and again, 23 acres. Pretty well divided equally. So the thought would be is that currently, right now, if we went out and sold lot number 2 and 3, that proceeds minus certain items would be split 50-50. Those items would be the original acquisition price of those 4 lots divided by the number of acres that we sell, along with the engineering study that is underway. That's about $40,000 to $50,000. Also, the taxes that have been paid on the property for the last 2 years, which is $40,000, and then marketing to date, roughly $10,000. Those net proceed items that I've identified have not included any prior capital cost in the original construction of the premise. So what would happen, you tally up all those costs, and that's about $120,000 to $30,000 in rough numbers. You divide that by the number of 23 acres that has been developed in terms of marketing. So you end up with about $5,000 to $6,000 per acre that would be subtracted off the purchase price. So if we sold a piece of property at $25,000 to $30,000 each, the gross would be $125,000, $130,000. Minus that would be approximately $25,000. And then from that, the $100,000 would be split 50-50 between EDC and Warren County proceeds.
Good. So what we're looking at...
All we're doing today is asking for permission, Mr. Chair, you're cutting me off here, which
That's okay, yeah.
is appropriate. I understand. That's fine.
I'm just looking at the
Yeah,
clock.
I know
here.
that. No, you're right.
So what we're looking at here is a resolution, a motion authorizing the scheduling of a public hearing, when certainly these issues would have ample opportunity to be discussed in detail. So a public hearing to consider an amendment and extension of an option agreement with the Economic Development Corporation, Warren County, regarding the proposed sale of real property. Can I have a motion to that effect, please? Supervisor Beatty, seconded by Supervisor McGowan. Any further discussion, Supervisor in the back of the room? Yes.
Date of that again is...
It's our November board meeting.
Oh, 15th, okay, I can second it. Okay, yeah.
Did I see another hand? Supervisor Stroud, did you have?
I just wanted to know what date.
Friday. The county
I
board-
heard
county board
November.
meeting. Third Friday in November.
All right, I just heard November 11th, Veterans Day.
No, it's the 15th,
Our attorney, did you want to make a comment, Mary, or not?
No.
You're all set? Yeah, okay. Supervisor, yeah.
I'm sorry, how long is the extension?
18 months.
18 months, okay.
Supervisor Bramer.
Since this is going to be at the full boarding, I'm not a full board meeting. I just want to ask this question now so it doesn't come up again. You're saying when you sell the lots, you'll take the gross proceeds, subtract off your costs,
Right.
EDC's costs as you've laid out, and then
It's split that.
Then the net proceeds will be split in half between you, EDC, and Warren County.
Not me, personally.
I know.
Hey, get a little something.
Write the check to
EDC.
Ed Bartholomew, happy birthday.
Yes, thank you. EDC in Warren County, yes. Where it goes from the county, that's a prerogative of the county.
And then at the end of the 18 months, that'll be it, the option agreement expires unless we do something.
Yeah, either we purchase or say no to the acquisition, those 4 remaining lots.
Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we do nothing with this option, where does the current option stand?
Expires on November 5th.
Gotcha.
Supervisor McGowan.
What does Warren County have into all this? You know, how much did Warren County spend to, start all this? Plus, the infrastructure, the road and the water.
Warren County contributed money into that. Also, EDA, the federal government, contributed money into that. The EDC did contribute money into that. So rather than dividing that and putting all of that, we did not include any of those capital costs into this formula. This formula is based on starting from the date that EDC acquired this property and going forward.
Well, I do understand. I think last meeting we touched base on this, and you did talk about it, so...
So I was trying to get that whole issue there is that I think it divided up, and I think it makes it more easy to move forward with just saying that we are partners in this. From the very beginning, this came about because it was a tax sale from a former quarry in that particular area, and the predecessor to EDC, the Queensbury Economic Development Corporation, was involved in this, and the late John Michaels was the one that sat down. I had some conversations with Mike Swan as to getting the background on this, was the one that felt at that time, in the mid-1990s, there was not a lot of activity, private development, in terms of acquiring properties for economic development. And so John Michaels felt it was important for the economic wing in the county to take and purchase this piece of property. As we have recognized and discussed at our last couple of meetings and in the past year, that piece of property has some constraints, and that's why EDC is going out and expending money with Chazen right now, walking the wetlands again to redelineate those with DEC, as well as having geotech, particularly on the back 4 lots, in terms of the outcropping of the rocks, because it was a quarry, and you can see the outcropping in those latter back 4 lots here. So all that together may end up, instead of being 8 lots for us to develop, we may end up with 6 good buildable lots or 7 good buildable lots, Brad, instead of the 8 right now, to have them more flexible and viable. The wetland areas tend to be along the eastern boundary of the property, and you drive into the roadway that's put in there, you can see the cattails that are popping up along the eastern boundary of the particular piece of property. So there are some constraints on the property. So that's where we would stand at this point here.
Great. Supervisor Wild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is basically a 50%, it's almost like a brokerage fee then, right? In essence?
Yes.
Supervisor McGowan, did you have something else?
Oh, yeah, no, thank you. I want to thank you for all that. I mean, I just want to say, I think what you're doing over there is great, and I think we're not in the marketing business as a county to do this, and what you can bring in, I think this is a great idea, and I remember you presenting this last committee meeting, I think it was, and I think it's a great idea to see what we actually have over there and what can be done. So I don't have a problem with the 50-50 at the end.
Great. There's a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Did you, Travis, saw your hand go up?
I just wanted to make the point that while I agree in general with the idea of having public hearings, I've always been under the impression that only a major vote of all the supervisors to go ahead and take any final decision and set a date for a public hearing. I'm just thinking of possibly missing a step where, at this point, you have to bring this resolution before the board, and after they agree to it, and set a public hearing. That's just my observation.
Okay, thank you, Travis. Did anyone want to address that? I guess go ahead, Mary.
I've never heard of that rule, but if that's what we want to follow, we can introduce the public hearing at November 1st, since we have the special board meeting, and then hold it on November 15th.
Okay. Second, again, when we voted, it kind of, all of a sudden it went to Travis. So-
Well, I would also have our council review that claim, see if
Great,
it's
great.
valid.
Thank you very much. Why don't we do this one more time? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Anything left that anyone would like to discuss? Privilege of the floor? Seeing none, can I get a motion to adjourn, please? Supervisor McGowan, second by Supervisor Beatty. Meeting is adjourned.